My girlfriend said, "We fell apart, but I think she just fell for someone else instead." She said it like a diagnosis, like she was the reasonable one breaking bad news gently to a patient in denial, not the person standing in our living room with her phone still face down on the coffee table and her bag already packed by the door. My thumb was worrying this loose thread on the seam of the couch, pulling and letting it snap back, pulling again, because if I didn't focus on that I was pretty sure I was going to throw up. The TV was on mute behind her, some cooking show with perfect people plating perfect food, and the subtitles just kept quietly rolling along while my life was detonating in regular volume. "We didn't just fall apart, Jess," I said, and even I heard the shake in my own voice. "Things don't just disintegrate on their own. Something or someone helped, and it wasn't me." She flinched like I'd slapped her, then did that thing where she looked everywhere but at me. At the plant in the corner, the bookshelf, the chipped coffee table we'd gotten off Marketplace. Anywhere but my face. Her fingers were twisted up in her hoodie strings, tugging them tight, letting them go. "This is exactly why I didn't want to have this conversation with you," she muttered. "You always have to find someone to blame. Sometimes things just stop working." We'd been together for 5 years when she said that. I'm 29 now. We got together when I was 24 and she was 23, fresh out of uni. Both of us still in that messy stage where your furniture is half from IKEA and half from your parents' garage. My name's Liam, by the way. Her name is Jessica, but I almost never called her that unless I was mocking her for something. She was Jess, or Hey Menace when she'd leave her socks in random places. I'm not going to pretend we were some epic, once-in-a-lifetime love story. We were two fairly normal people who met in a fairly normal way and built a fairly normal life together. Maybe that's what stings the most, that she's trying to rewrite what happened between us as this vague "we fell apart" instead of what it actually felt like. She climbed into someone else's arms while I was still holding up the roof. We met at a friend's birthday picnic in the park, the kind where someone brings a Bluetooth speaker, everyone brings the same 3 types of chips, and there's always one guy who brings a guitar and plays Wonderwall unironically. I almost didn't go. I'd had a hell week at work and wanted to spend my Sunday doing nothing but eating leftover Chinese and staring at my ceiling. My friend Sam bullied me into it. "You'll just sit in your room and sulk," he texted. "Come touch some grass." So I went. It was one of those warm but not stupidly hot spring days. People were sprawled on picnic blankets, half the group already tipsy. Jess was sitting cross-legged on the grass, trying to pour humus out of a too small container without it landing on her jeans. She was wearing this yellow sundress with tiny white flowers on it, and her hair was up in a messy bun with a pencil stuck through it. I remember that stupid pencil more clearly than half our relationship. Sam waved me over. "Liam, this is Jess," he said. "She's in marketing, don't hold it against her. Jess, this is the guy I told you about who eats cereal for dinner." She grinned at me, eyes crinkling. "Bold of you to assume I don't also eat cereal for dinner," she said, sticking out a hand. There was humus on her thumb. I shook it anyway. "Nice to meet you. I'm slightly concerned I've been used as a cautionary tale in your conversations." "Only in the sense that you make me feel better about my life choices," she said. Then she laughed so genuinely that I couldn't even be annoyed. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking in that half-shout you use at park gatherings, because there's always a kid screaming or someone blasting music nearby. We talked about stupid stuff at first, favorite crisp flavors, the correct ratio of milk to cereal, hers, too much cereal, mine, borderline soup. Then it drifted into real stuff. Her job at a mid-sized agency, my job in IT for a local council, which sounds soul-sucking but was actually more interesting than people expect. I kind of like fixing things, I admitted, lying back on the grass, using my hoodie as a pillow. Computers are simple, people not so much. "That's because computers tell you what's wrong," she said. "People just act weird and expect you to guess." I liked that she wasn't trying to be deep, but accidentally was. I liked that she snorted when she laughed. I liked that she didn't mock me too much when I told her I played five-a-side soccer on Thursdays like an overgrown teenager. At the end of the day, when everyone was packing up, she grabbed a napkin, scribbled something on it, and shoved it into my hoodie pocket. "Just in case your Wi-Fi dies and you need someone to complain to," she said. It was her number, obviously. I texted her that night. Me, Wi-Fi miraculously functioning, complaining anyway. She replied almost instantly. "Jess, wow, desperate." It went from there. In the beginning, we were both broke, both busy, both improvising. She had a tiny room in a share house with 3 other girls and a very passive-aggressive fridge chart. I lived with 2 guys who thought dishes were a concept, not an action. We spent a lot of time at cheap pubs and on each other's beds watching Netflix on laptops because neither of us had a proper TV. She'd show up to my place with a bottle of Aldi wine and a bag of frozen chips and call it fine dining. I'd fix her dodgy laptop, and she'd say I was basically a wizard. When I had a rough day dealing with some angry residents screaming at me about a parking fine I hadn't personally issued, she'd do dumb impressions of them until I was laughing so hard I forgot why I'd been annoyed. We moved in together after 18 months, more out of logistics than some big romantic gesture. Her lease was up, my roommates wanted to move closer to the city, and we found this small one-bedroom flat above a cafe that did decent coffee and questionable muffins. The walls were thin, the shower pressure was terrible, and the bedroom window rattled when buses went past, but it felt like ours. We built a life in that flat, not a glamorous Instagram life, just a normal one. Sunday grocery trips, arguing about whose turn it was to take the bins out, falling asleep on each other on the couch mid-episode, her late nights finishing campaign reports, my early mornings on the train, half asleep with a keep cup of coffee. If you'd shown me a snapshot of us in year 2, I would have said we were solid. Not perfect, no one is, but solid. We fought sometimes, sure, but who does? Mostly over stupid crap. My tendency to leave cables everywhere, her habit of hitting snooze 8 times. Our bigger arguments always came back to the same theme: time. "You're always working late," she'd say, leaning against the kitchen counter while I stood in my work shirt, tie already ripped off, reheating leftovers. "When we first got together, you used to come to gigs with me, remember?" "I still do," I'd protest, "just not every single one. I have a job that expects me to be semi-conscious in the morning." She'd roll her eyes. "Yeah, God forbid you be tired for your very important printer fixing." "It's not just printers," I'd say, strung. "And I'm not saying your job isn't important, I can't go out 3 weeknights in a row and still function. I'm not 21 anymore." "You talk like you're 80, she'd mutter. We always made up, sometimes with apologies, sometimes with kisses that blurred into sex, sometimes with a silent truce of ordering takeaway and watching trash TV. I thought that was normal. I don't know when we're both busy and tired turned into, we're not really seeing each other anymore, except in passing. It wasn't like a switch flipped. It was more like slowly turning down the light until one day you realize you're sitting in the dark. Year 4 was when things started to feel off. On paper, that year should have been good. I got a promotion at work, a move into more of a project coordinator role instead of just fixing whatever. Broke, she landed a big client, a national clothing brand that made her eyes light up when she talked about their campaign. We celebrated with cheap champagne on our balcony, sticky summer air pressing in around us. She stood there in an oversized t-shirt, hair twisted up, bubbles popping against her lip. "Look at us," she said, bumping her glass against mine, almost like real adults. "Speak for yourself," I said. "I still had cereal for dinner last night." "You're disgusting," she said fondly. We talked about maybe upgrading to a bigger place in a year or 2, about maybe someday getting a dog. Kids were this hazy, far-off thing we sometimes joked about. Imagine a small version of you leaving Lego everywhere. I'd lose my mind, but hadn't seriously sat down to discuss. There was time. We thought there was time. The drift didn't start with some dramatic fight. It started with her saying I'll be late, don't wait up more often. With me going to bed alone, listening to the street noise and her keys in the door at midnight, the soft rustle of her trying not to wake me. With both of us, slowly and in different ways, shifting our primary emotional energy away from each other and into work, friends, hobbies. I noticed she was on her phone more. Everyone is, I know, but this was different. She'd be half watching a movie, half texting someone, smiling at something they wrote. I'd ask what's funny, and she'd say, "Oh, nothing, just work stuff," and turn the screen slightly away without seeming to. I didn't question it at first. I trusted her. That's the thing, trust isn't just I don't think you sleep with someone else, it's also I assume you'll tell me if something's wrong. The name Ethan entered our lives somewhere around this time. At first, he was simply the new guy at her work. They'd hired him to help with the creative side of campaigns, design, copy, the stuff Jess usually got stuck doing on top of account management. "He actually knows what TikTok is," she said one night, kicking off her shoes in the hallway. "And he doesn't say the Twitter like Kevin." Kevin was her 50-something boss who still printed his emails so he could look at them properly. "Low bar," I said, stirring pasta. "No, but seriously, it's nice," she said. "He gets it. He gets how stupid some of the briefs are, but he still cares about making them good." "Sounds like you," I said, and she smiled in that way she does when you say something that hits a soft spot. We had him over for drinks once early on. He showed up with craft beer and fancy cheese, tall and skinny in that never been properly fed way, wearing a beanie even though it wasn't particularly cold. He was charming, I'll give him that, made self-deprecating jokes, asked about my job in a way that didn't sound fake. You guys are lucky, he said at one point, looking between us. You're like settled, in a good way. I'm still going home to two housemates who leave their socks on the kitchen table. Jess laughed. That's only on Wednesdays here. We all laughed. It was nice. Casual. If you told me then that this guy would end up being the person my girlfriend cried to about how we fell apart, I would have said you were projecting. The emotional cheating, the part no one involved wants to call cheating, started way before whatever physical stuff happened. I know that now, looking back on message screenshots I wish I'd never seen. The first real twinge I had about Ethan came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk at work, in that post-lunch slump, when Jess texted me a selfie. She was in a meeting room making a face, head tilted back, eyes crossed. Under it. Jess, if I have to sit through one more brainstorm, where Kevin suggests we put everything on Facebook, I'm going to fake my own death. I snorted, replied. Me, do it, I'll help you assume a new identity. We can move to Tasmania and start a potato farm. I watched the little typing bubble appear, then disappear. No response. Then, by sheer accident, that bastard coincidence again, my screen lit up with a notification from Instagram. I'd left her logged in on my phone ages ago so I could post a birthday message she dictated, and neither of us had bothered to log out. A DM popped up at the top. Ethan JPG, hahaha, if you fake death can I come? This place would collapse without us. Underneath the preview, sent a reel. It took me a second to process that I was seeing it from her account's point of view, from the way she was messaging him. I hadn't gone looking, I hadn't snooped. It was right there, like catching a snippet of conversation through an open door. I sat there, my hand still half on the mouse, and watched as 3 more notifications rolled in. Ethan, JPG, also Kevin just called TikTok, click clock, and I nearly choked. Ethan JPG, her face in this meeting is sustaining me BTW. Ethan JPG, we should start our own agency, just you and me, no boomers allowed. That last one made my stomach drop a little. It wasn't overtly flirty, it wasn't overtly anything, but there was a tone, a familiarity. I told myself I was being paranoid. Colleagues make jokes like that all the time. God knows I'd complained about my boss to coworkers. I didn't mention it to Jess right away. I watched, I guess. I hate that word. Makes me sound like some creepy lurker. But I started paying attention. She talked about him more. Ethan said this, Ethan thinks that. I started hearing his name when we were brushing our teeth, making dinner, folding laundry. I tried to join in, ask about him like a normal partner would. Is he single? I asked once, trying to sound more curious than threatened. She shrugged, scrolling through her phone on the couch. Yeah, I think so. Why? Just wondering. I said, you talk about him a lot. She put her phone down, frowned. Are you jealous? No, I lied too quickly. I mean, not in some weird way. I just want to know the characters in the story, I guess. She rolled her eyes. He's a coworker, Liam. A friend, don't make it a thing. I'm not making it a thing, I said, heat creeping up my neck. I'm just saying, if I had a female coworker I talked to all the time and never mentioned whether she was seeing someone, you'd probably have questions too. Yeah, and I'd ask them like a normal person instead of being weird about it, she snapped. That strung, I backed off. I told myself I was being insecure and that this was my issue to deal with, not hers. Here's the part where I wish I could say I confronted things earlier, that I took the therapist-approved route and said, I feel like your relationship with Ethan is crossing a line, can we talk about boundaries? Instead, I did what I'm good at. Internalized, minimized, let the ground erode slowly under my feet while telling myself it was just a small crack. The actual cheating came out in the most cliché way possible, drunk honesty and a badly timed confession. It was a Friday night. Jess had her work Christmas party at some fancy rooftop bar, mandatory team building and free drinks. I wasn't invited, it was employees only. I'd gone out for a few beers with my workmates, came home around 11, expecting her to either be home or send me some chaotic text about late-night kebabs. At midnight, she still wasn't home. I texted. Me, party still going. No reply. By 1, I was packing. I checked Find My on impulse. We'd shared locations ages ago after she'd gotten stuck on a train. Her dot hovered over a street nowhere near the rooftop bar, a side street near her office. My stomach clenched. I tried to talk myself down. Maybe the party had moved venues. Maybe they were at some bar nearby. Maybe the app was lagging. My brain, traitor that it is, served up the image of Ethan's skinny frame, Benny, and easy laugh. At 1:20, the front door rattled. Jess stumbled in, heels dangling from one hand, makeup smudged. She smelled like alcohol, sweat, and a cologne that wasn't mine. "Hey," she said too loud when she saw me. "You're up." "Yeah," I said, grabbing onto the back of the couch so I wouldn't reach for her and smell her like some deranged bloodhound. "Been up for a while." She dropped her shoes, kicked them towards the wall, and leaned against the door frame, closing her eyes for a second. "Tonight was wild," she slurred. "Where was it?" I asked carefully. "Last I checked, not near your office." Her eyes snapped open. "Did you track me?" she demanded. I held up my phone. "You shared your location with me, remember? After that time you got stuck on the train and had a panic attack. You told me to keep it on, just in case." She stared at me like she was doing the maths of how much I knew. "Right," she said. "Jess," I said, feeling suddenly very, very sober. "Were you with him?" "Who?" she asked, but there was this fractional delay, like a bad actor forgetting their lines. "Ethan," I said. She laughed too high-pitched. "We're co-workers, Liam. Of course he was there." "That's not what I asked," I said. "Were you with him after the party?" She looked at me then properly, and for a fleeting second the bravado dropped. I saw something raw, guilt, fear, something else, and then she straightened her shoulders like she'd made a decision. "We had a drink," she said, dropping her bag a little too hard on the floor. "It wasn't a big deal. At 1 a.m, I said, at a bar nowhere near the party venue. Just the two of you, so now I'm not allowed to have friends." She snapped, pushing past me into the living room. "Oh my God, can we not do the 'you're policing me' thing?" I said, following her. "I'm asking a simple question. Did something happen?" She spun around, eyes flashing. "Why do you always do this?" she said. "Why do you always assume the worst?" "Because the worst keeps creeping closer," I shot back. "Because you've been acting weird for months and I've been giving you the benefit of the doubt. And now you're coming home at 1 a.m. smelling like someone else's aftershave, and asking me to ignore it feels like asking me to be an idiot." She froze. For a second the room was painfully quiet. I could hear the fridge humming. A car drove past outside, headlights briefly flashing through the curtains. Then she sank onto the couch, shoulders slumping, and started to cry. Not dainty tears, ugly, messy sobs that shook her whole body. My heart dropped into my stomach. I sat next to her automatically, muscle memory, hand hovering above her back before I pulled it back. I didn't know if I was allowed to touch her. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry." "What did you do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She covered her face with her hands. "We kissed," she said, words muffled. "It just happened." I laughed. It came out harsh and brittle. "Of course it just happened," I said, "because you tripped and fell and your lips accidentally landed on his, and the universe conspired to make you straddle each other on a bar stool, right?" "Don't," she sobbed. "Don't be mean about it. I already feel like shit." "Good," I snapped. "You should." There was more. There's always more. The kiss had been brewing for a while. They crossed some lines emotionally. They'd talked about us. That last part made me want to put my fist through a wall. "You want to talk about my relationship? Talk to me, not to the guy who has a crush on you and a beanie collection." That night was a blur of shouting and crying and her saying, "I don't know what I want," over and over like a mantra. At some point, I grabbed a blanket and slept on the floor in the office, staring at the underside of the desk and wondering how the hell we'd gotten there. The next morning, she was quieter, hungover and hollow-eyed, clutching a mug of coffee like a life raft. "I want to try and fix this," she said. "If you'll let me. I don't want to throw away 5 years over one mistake." "One mistake," I repeated, watching her. "Jess, this wasn't just a random kiss with a stranger on a night out. This was months of texting and inside jokes and you choosing him as your person instead of me. The kiss was just the bit I couldn't pretend not to see anymore." She started crying again. "I know," she said. "I know I fucked up. I know I've been pulling away. I've just felt so lost, Lee. Like the version of me that's with you is the responsible girlfriend and the version of me that's with him is freer somehow. Less stuck. That's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. I just fell for him," I said quietly. She looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't say no. "We did the thing you're supposed to do. We went to couples therapy for a while. She blocked Ethan on everything, at least as far as I could see. She quit the account he worked on. She said she'd asked to be moved to different clients. For a few months we tried to rebuild. There were good days. Days where we cooked together, where we went for walks, where we laughed, and I almost saw the girl with the pencil in her hair again. There were days where I felt like we might actually make it through. But there were also days where I'd come home to find her staring at nothing, phone in her hand, and I'd know she was thinking about him. nights where she'd turn away in bed, and I'd lie there feeling like a stranger next to someone whose coffee order I could recite by heart. Trust once cracked doesn't slide neatly back into place. It creaks, it groans. Therapy brought up stuff we'd avoided, my tendency to shut down when I felt attacked, her habit of bottling things up until they exploded, my resentment that I'd been the one holding the boring end of our life, bills, rent, dentist appointments, while she got to be the fun one. Her resentment that I'd slowly become more like my dad, a guy who stayed late at work and came home carrying invisible stress, when she'd sworn she'd never date someone like that. "We're not who we were at 24, our therapist said gently once. That's not a bad thing, but you have to decide whether you like who you've become together, and if you don't, whether you're willing to do the work to become something else." At least I thought I was. I cut back on overtime. I tried to be more present, less absent even when I was physically there. She tried to let me in more. For a while, it felt like we were clawing our way back up a cliff. Then slowly, I realized I was the only one still climbing. Little things, she'd forget therapy appointments. She'd cancel date nights because she was too tired. I'd find tabs open on her laptop for rental listings in other suburbs, how to move out checklists. When I asked, she'd say, "Oh, it's just research. I like looking at houses." About 8 months after the kiss, after the whole "it was a one-time mistake, we're working through it," we had the conversation that started this post. It was a normal Sunday on the surface. We'd done groceries in the morning. I'd vacuumed. She'd watered the plants, nothing dramatic. In the afternoon, she said, "Can we talk?" in that tone that makes your stomach drop. She stood in the living room, fingers tangled in those hoodie strings, bag by the door. My chest tightened. I knew before she opened her mouth. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "I've tried, Liam, I really have, but I don't feel it. Not like I used to. We're just wrong now." "We're not wrong," I said, heart hammering. "We're hurt, there's a difference." She shook her head, eyes shiny. "We fell apart," she said. "We did. We've been falling apart for a long time, even before Ethan. We just didn't want to admit it." "There it is," I said, bitterness creeping in despite my best efforts. "Even before Ethan. You had to get his name in there somehow." "It's not about him," she snapped, then softer, "not entirely." "Do you still talk to him?" I asked. She hesitated just a fraction too long. "We ran into each other at a work thing," she said. "A few weeks ago, we talked. It made me realize how much I've been holding onto something that isn't there anymore." "Here, what I don't get," I said, that thread between my fingers again. "If we fell apart, why does it look so much like you fell somewhere else instead? You keep talking about we like this was some mutual drift, but I've been here the whole time. You're the one who left emotionally months ago, and now you're making it sound like we just quietly dissolved, like sugar in tea." She winced. "That's not fair," she said. "You changed too. You got so serious. You used to be fun." "I grew up," I said. "So did you. I still think we could have grown up together." "I don't," she said, and something in her voice, sad, firm, resigned, told me this wasn't a bluff. This wasn't a fight I could argue us out of. "Are you with him?" I asked. I had to know. "No," she said immediately. "Not yet." Not yet, those two words told me everything. "You know that's worse, right?" I said quietly, "that you're not even pretending this decision is independent of him." She started crying again. I sat there and watched, feeling weirdly detached, like I'd stepped outside myself. "I don't love you the way I used to," she sobbed. "I care about you, I do, but it's not enough. And it's not fair to keep you here while I keep wondering about other lives." And that, I guess, is the most honest thing she said in that whole conversation. She left that day, went to her friend's place for a while, took a suitcase and her favorite coffee mug and the hoodie she always stole from me. The plants stayed. They died a month later. Make of that metaphor what you will. We've been broken up for 6 months now. She's officially with Ethan. I know because mutual friends talk, and because my masochistic side checked her Instagram once and saw a soft launch photo of their backs at some gig, his beanie and her messy bun silhouetted against stage lights. The caption was some vague crap about new beginnings. I blocked her after that, not out of rage, just self-preservation. So why am I here writing this? I'm not looking for advice on how to win her back. I don't want her back, not really. Even if she showed up tomorrow saying she'd made a huge mistake, I don't think I could ever unknow the fact that her instinct, when our relationship felt stale, was to go looking for a new storyline rather than talk to the guy who'd built the old one with her. I think I'm writing this because that phrase, "we fell apart," has been stuck in my head like a splinter, and I need to pull it out. We didn't just fall apart, we were chipped away at. By stress, by miscommunication, by long days and short tempers, and the way we both silently resented each other for growing in directions we didn't expect. but also by a third person we let into the space between us. I say we because, yeah, I own my part. I ignored red flags. I avoided hard conversations. I let myself coast on we're fine long after we weren't. But there's a difference between falling apart and walking away. She walked. Towards someone else, sure, but also away from the version of herself she'd built with me. I can't compete with that. I shouldn't have to. In the months since, I've done the cliché breakup things. Joined the gym for a bit, then stopped going. Went on a couple of awkward dates where I overshared and then apologized. Reconnected with mates I'd let slip. Started seeing a therapist on my own, because apparently that's just what you do now when your life implodes. Therapy has been confronting. It turns out I'm not just the sad, noble victim in this story. I'm also the guy who made it hard for Jess to be vulnerable, because I always had a solution ready before I had empathy. I'm the guy who dismissed her complaints about work as everyone's job sucks instead of really listening. I'm the guy who let my fear of being abandoned turn into clinginess at times and emotional distance at others. None of that means I deserve to be cheated on. People assume when you say I see my part in it that you're excusing the cheating. I'm not. She had 100 opportunities to say, I'm unhappy, we need to change something, before she put her mouth on someone else. She chose that, that's on her. But it does mean I can't just sit here forever telling myself the comfortingly simple story that we were perfect. She ruined it. We weren't perfect. We were human, messy, afraid. And when faced with that mess, we made different choices. I dug in and tried to repair. She grabbed a parachute labeled someone else and jumped. If you're in a relationship right now and you hear yourself or your partner saying, we're falling apart, I don't have any neat advice except this. Don't let those words be an excuse. Falling apart isn't an inevitable natural disaster. It's a series of tiny daily choices to turn towards or away from each other. Jess and I turned away, in different ways and at different paces. And yeah, she fell for someone else. That hurts in a very specific, sharp way I wouldn't wish on anyone. But I'm starting to realize that maybe, eventually, falling apart from something that no longer fit is better than staying stuck in it out of inertia. I don't know who I'll be with next, if anyone. I'm still learning how to be with myself without instinctively checking whether Jess has texted, without hearing phantom keys in the door. But I do know this. Next time if someone tells me we fell apart, I want to be able to say no, we talked. We tried. We made choices with our eyes open. Because right now, sitting here on the same couch where she once told me she loved me and later told me we were over, the only thing I'm sure of is that we didn't just fall. She stepped. And I'm finally, slowly, stepping too, just in a different direction.